It's just.
That's the public hearing script, but there is.
Yeah, this is because
There,
you all are going to be,
but what they were just talking about is,
any quasi judicial. Yeah. Yes, and let's,
this is the document.
yeah, that's the one that, with all the motions on there.
This is something you could provide to everybody.
You have. I think Eric has one. No, actually, he doesn't.
This is a 2-page document that they'll provide to people if you want to make sample motions, you know, during.
Yeah, that's what we're going, let's start, so we're, so.
All right, sorry. Okay, I'll call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission work session for September 10th, 2024. Sean, are you in charge of this work session? Facilitator?
Yeah.
All right, then I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, so what we just wanted to go over with everyone tonight is what you have in front of you is the quasi judicial public hearing script, and it really just takes you through a quasi judicial process project, because Sherwood Commerce Center Phase 2, which
Sorry to interrupt you.
Mhm.
So we're gonna get into the hearing now. Just to be really safe, this is a safe application we're gonna hear. Application A, how about that?
Sure.
It says there it's in review, so we shouldn't talk about any in review. So maybe application A, yeah.
Okay, application A, and in subsequent months, you'll be seeing other applications, B, C. We just wanted to for some of the new members too, and the current members, just go through what the process is, walk you through it. If you have any questions, we can kind of address those and discuss them now, just so everyone's familiar as you, you know, the upcoming meetings, what you can expect. Be a little prep, so.
And just to be clear, so we will talk, we want to go over the process with you on all the upcoming quasi judicial. So we can't get like, if you guys have a question on the application that we're gonna hear in a few minutes, save those until that time. So we just need to talk generally here. And there's a few other high profile applications that you guys are aware of. Stay away from any details of specific applications right now, just process.
And this
So-
process is quasi judicial, not legislative like we did last week.
Yep,
Yeah.
so, what I'd recommend, maybe I'll say two more words, what I recommend, if Sean's okay with this, well, just have Gene go kind of top to bottom on the process. And, Gene, you know this really well.
Yeah.
And we can just kind of walk you through what's gonna happen in these quasi judicial hearings. And kind of, you guys can ask questions about that step as we go, if that makes sense. So, yeah, quasi judicial, we talked about this a little bit, but it's when we have an applicant to the city of Sherwood for some type of development. It's usually not the city's own plans, that we have this big plan for this area. It's not what we're talking about. It's someone's coming to the city, they want approval for a project, then we get into this quasi judicial hearing process. So,
If it's big enough.
if it's big enough, and you guys are, like I mentioned, you guys are the type, what we call type 4. So it goes type 1 all the way to type 4. Biggest applications are type 4, all the way to type 5. Quasi judicial, it kind of stops at 4, but yeah. So you guys would be seeing anything over 40,000 square feet is what you guys are going to look at. So, Jane, you just want to walk us through top to bottom, usually what happens?
I call it to order and then the staff will read this entire report and, I guess the public hearing is in the following order. And I guess I just want to skip to the next part and then we'll go back through the one-on-ones. The 7 steps, but the part that the staff is reading and what the audience needs to be aware of is that the decision may be made at the close of the hearing, or it may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this is the only notice of that date you receive. That's why when we make motions, the language is really clear that we are either closing the public record or we're keeping the public record open. And when we're continuing it to a date certain so that we are publicly notifying all all of the citizens of when the next hearing is gonna be. That's part one. The next part is having to do with people that signed up electronically. We have people that can testify remotely. And they'll state their name and address for the record. If the staff didn't receive any, then we just skip it. If there's anybody in the audience, they fill out a blue card and turn it in, and then we just try and call them in order based on proponents, opponents, and neutral. And then little instructions about the microphone having to be on, and that all the questions are addressed through the chair. So they ask me the questions, and generally speaking, sometimes I answer, if I know the answer and I'm certain of it, it's easy to answer, I might answer. But generally, it's nice to hear their questions and allow the applicant or staff to provide the answer, because we're not the applicant is here, we're like judges, and so the applicant is here to make their case. If other people are coming up to testify and they have questions, it's really for the applicant to defend their own application or the staff to confirm what's going on. If they're confused about the process, that's a question that the chair can answer, and sometimes I just need to, let staff do that, but it doesn't happen that way. And so this is key for us to understand that in reaching the decision on the application, we have to consider whether the applicant meets the relevant criteria in the city's land use regulation. And those criteria are identified in the staff report. Staff reports are available, testimony and evidence must address those criteria. So this isn't like staff just made a bunch of stuff up. When they come in for pre-application meetings, staff meets with the applicant ahead of time and says, here's the code sections you're gonna have to do. And then you saw in binder, you'll get a binder. And the applicant has a set of checklists that they have to respond to. It says, how did I meet this code? How did I meet this code? So they respond to all that, and then the staff make sure they answered all the questions, and then they tell us whether the response from the applicant meets the criteria or fails to meet the criteria. And if it fails to meet it, can it be conditioned to meet it? So let's say it was supposed to have 75 parking spots and they only had 70. You don't deny an application, because state law says that if it can be reasonably conditioned for them to be able to be approved, then it's our obligation to provide a condition of approval that would allow them to meet our criteria and have the application approved. But if they have an application that requires 75 spaces and they only got 30, and the way they laid everything out, it's not gonna work, then there may be a reason to deny it. And parking's not a really good one to say, but it's an easy one to visualize. So our job is to judge whether what the applicant submitted meets the code. Staff usually does all the homework for us. We just have to read their homework. There are some very few subjective things when we get into conditional use permits where it's like, we look at that and did they meet the criteria and the spirit of the code? And also, when we act as a design review committee, there's a couple of sections on the code where the applicant has a they have the clear and objective. You can follow these rules and you do these 6 things, it's approved. If you want to do something that varies from that, then it goes up to the next level, and then we act like the design review committee. And so those are the few cases of subjectiveness that are in the code, and that's why staff may make a recommendation. But if you or any member of the commission says, I think the applicant's response and how the staff interpreted doesn't meet the code, then we have to be able to craft a finding that says why the applicant didn't meet the code. Or conversely, the staff says, I don't think the applicant met the code. And then we can look at it, and the applicant may bring testimony before us that says, I think the staff missed it because my response and my picture that I'm bringing you tonight clearly shows that I'm meeting it. And then we would ask staff to say, we agree with the applicant, and we would ask the staff to reword the findings so that our application is that our response to the application shows that they met the criteria based on our interpretation of the code. And again, not very much subjectiveness where we get to do that. And there's times that, and again, in reaching the decision, we have to consider what is the relevant approval criteria. You can't ask, well, how much are you gonna sell the coffee beans in the coffee shop you're building? That has nothing to do with.
How much are you gonna pay your employees, all that we
Those are-
can't get into that.
That is not our, we can't even ask who the tenant's gonna be because we don't control that, because. In the old days, it used to be, a conditional approval was. A different subjective, so you wouldn't ask which church are you gonna put in your church building? You're just building a church building, it's irregardless of, it's that question of what's in there. Doesn't matter, does it meet the criteria is what we look at.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt you, you guys aren't gonna hurt our feelings if you disagree, if you're like, what is staff talking about? Or the applicant, you're not gonna hurt our feelings, so if something's not clear, let us know. Hey, I just did not see what you guys saw. Can you explain it to me? Or if you're just like, I see what you guys saw, but I disagree. No problem. Seriously, we always try and get it right, but sometimes it is just a little more subjective, and sometimes there's just a difference of opinion. And if that happens, then there could be Gene is great at this as the chair, kind of look around, get a temperature check. Are other people in agreement, or are you, you're kind of the one person on that, that's okay too, right? That's why we got 7 people.
And same for me, as if I come off with like, I really think this is, I'd really like that fence to be 6 feet tall and the applicant only wants it to be 3 feet. And I look around the room and there's 6 other commissioners looking at me like I'm nuts. Then, I just need to put a pin in it and have someone kick me under the table and say, just let it go.
Right.
Or I look at 6 other people nodding their heads going, yeah, we really need to buffer it. Then we, as a commission, when it's. Sometimes we should just take a vote because it is complicated and it is, a significant change to the findings. Other times it's like.
And we've done that where we voted kind of in the middle of the hearing on particular matters within
Right,
it as well.
right, so.
I've seen you do that, look around and get a temperature check.
Yeah, or if I can't gauge what's going on and what I'm saying is, I really think we probably should change. I think we did it on bicycle spaces on one where it went from a half space to a full space. That's like, I don't remember if we took a vote or not, but it was one of those things that I couldn't, if you can't read the room, take a vote. That way we're not just, this is 7 people all coming together. The other thing is if you see something in the staff report and you're reading it over the weekend and you go, oh, this is like, that's so. Call the staff member Monday morning. Don't wait till Tuesday at the hearing to say, I think there's a major problem. I've called Eric, Hugo, Joy, anybody during, Monday morning just to say, or I've sent an email on Saturday.
On the weekend, that's fine.
I sent an email saying, can I call you? Can you call me on Monday? Cause I have a question.
And so the most appropriate person for that would the person who's presenting the staff report?
Yes.
And so whether it's Joy or, so whoever, or Sean.
Or Sean,
Okay.
if you prefer Amanda, Sean is always fine too, regardless of who's on it.
I was gonna ask that exact same question. How do we know for project day?
It's on the,
Yeah, it'll
be on the
there's always
cover
gonna be,
page.
there's always gonna be.
This is the cover page.
no,
Of
of
staff
the
report.
staff report.
Yeah.
The other thing that the staff report cover page is gonna show you is the 120-day rule. And when we,
Page 5, yeah.
when we,
It's Hugo.
Okay.
Yeah, call that.
So in this case, if project A said Hugo on it, then I would target Hugo first
Or Sean.
before going to Sean.
or
Sean, either one's fine, yeah.
the front of the page will also show you the 120-day rule. So if we start kicking the can down because we have to continue it, you'll hear me ask a couple of things. One is, will the applicant toll 120 days? So if we have made an administrative error, oftentimes it's not advantageous for the applicant to toll their 120 days and extend it because they want their application approved as soon as possible. But if they have like, oops, we missed including a traffic report. And we're gonna say, we'll continue it to a date certain, but we want you to toll your 120 days and extend our deadline. Because if we wait till day 121 and we haven't made a decision and gone through the appeal process, then it becomes a writ of mandamus and the application is approved.
What was the term you used?
Writ of mandamus.
Writ mandamus.
Just backing out a little bit.
It's like
and
Well-
I wanna-
operation of law, basically.
It just says they get it. They-
I get a sense of it, I was just trying to, the
It's like,
technical. I
but
was
but
like-
that's like way down the thing, and but just to say, there are things like the 120 days and why there's deadlines on the front of it and why we wanna make sure that when we're continuing applications. Know
And
what we're doing.
I derailed us from your flow here.
Mhm.
Are you guys familiar with 120 days? I don't know if we went over that with you guys yet. Are you familiar with that?
Yes,
You are.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, so we have 120 days from the time we mark the application complete. We have 120 days to reach a final decision, and that includes an appeal to whoever the appeal body is. So if you guys are hearing something, the appeal body is gonna be city council. So staff is always whoever's the planner is, we're always looking at the calendar. How can we get this application to you guys? Potentially have continuances like we have on an application tonight. Get to that next hearing, get a decision out. Get the notice out that the decision was made, and then do an appeal to city council. We have to do all that in 120 days. And so I think it's good by design. It's a state law that basically says cities don't be messing around on these things. You gotta get it done quickly. And so when things like this come up of a continuance, that's what we're always thinking is, can we still get this thing done? And there are ways, like Gene mentioned, to push out voluntary by the applicant. They can sign, yes, go ahead and extend 120 days. The sort of back end date is 365. So we have to get it from completeness to a final, even if they're giving us these exceptions to the 120 days.
Because they can agree to extend it.
They
It
can.
have to be.
But it can't
The back
exceed.
end is-
Can't exceed 300.
The back end is 365.
Okay.
And then,
And that's because code changes over time and such as well, or is there what's the
No,
reason
it-
for the 365, would you say?
I think it's just, I don't know for sure, but I think it's just putting parameters.
You know,
Just a reasonableness
Yeah.
for, you can't sit on
Yeah.
decisions you don't want.
Because the applicant could also be like, oh, we're waiting for this to happen or that to happen, and so, yeah, it just needs to get done. So-
Well, and also I think just the code thing, like I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to be reviewing an application that was 3 years old under code that was in place back then. either.
right, that's a really
Right.
good point. So when it put the notice, last part is failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission or the applicant parties an opportunity to respond, concludes appeal to city council land use. That just means that if someone's testifying before us, this is just telling them that it's best if they can reference the code. And if they come up to us and they can't reference the code, they just say, hey, they didn't get enough parking spaces, I counted them. We can help them by referencing the code and, getting them to the right point, but it has to be, they just can't say, I don't like it because it just doesn't feel right. That's not specific, doesn't reference a code, and it doesn't tell us.
And the other thing I'll say, sorry to keep interrupting you, important for you guys, like peace of mind, really, and staff as well. If a party doesn't raise the issue during the hearing, not even just if an issue just doesn't get raised, let's say we got land use application C in review, and there is there's something on the property that could, in theory, cause the application to be denied. We've never had this, and this is not anything I know of, but let's just say there's a floodplain, there's a wetland on the property. We're not, we don't know. That's a bad example. Let's say there's I don't know, something on the property. If the person doesn't come and actually say, here's the issue, here's how it relates to the code, and actually provide that information to all of us, You guys approve it, you guys didn't have that knowledge, we didn't have that knowledge. They can't come back in 2 weeks and appeal it based on an issue that they didn't raise to us, if that makes sense. So really to me, that means like, we need to really pay attention to what's being said, on the record. Plus whatever you guys are concerned about as a commission. But if it's not coming to us directly, it's not like there's this boogeyman out there that then 2 weeks later, city council is gonna get an appeal, right? It's like, they have to raise it. They have to give all of us the chance to respond to that issue, because it could be very likely that it's not an issue, right? So they say there's a wetland on that property, and actually there's a wetland delineation, and all we need to do is say, actually, there's no wetland, here's the report, and we shut it down there, and then obviously they shouldn't appeal on that. But if they just come after and say, oh, there's a wetland, they can't appeal on it, so. And again, I don't know if that. Just to be
But it's
clear.
the same with the applicant, if we did something that they think is, like in the staff report, was constitutionally wrong, and they said, well, the staff said I had to do this. My condition of approval says that I have to paint the building purple. And they didn't complain about it during the hearing, they also can't do the same thing, so if the applicant fails to raise constitutional during the hearing. So the next thing that's gonna come up and.
Real quick, I'm just curious, does 120-day rule apply to LUBA appeals too, or just city council appeals?
It's referred to as the final local decision.
Final local, okay.
So the next thing that's gonna happen is that they're gonna state, because this is quasi judicial, you're all acting as judges. They're gonna say, the staff is gonna ask members of the commission to disclose ex parte contact, bias, or conflicts of interest. And you have to indicate the nature and extent of any ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Because of other things that have happened, we will be told individually. She will say, Commissioner Vance, do you have, and then your answer, they give us a script, if none, to say I have none. Blah, blah, it says right here, and plan to participate in the hearing. But let's say your neighbor came to you and said, hey, application A is coming up before you. I'd like to tell you, I know that there is this thing that's going on here, and I think it's pretty bad that you should not approve this. That's an ex parte contact. The world does not stop. This is what we do. Commissioner Simpson. Do you have any? Well, I happen to have an ex parte contact. My neighbor said that there is this thing on the property. And they don't think I should approve it. However, that does not preclude me from performing my duties impartially, and I intend to participate in the hearing this evening. Just because someone told me a piece of information doesn't mean I have to step down. It's an ex parte contact, I need to disclose it, the applicant and other staff need, and if something like that happens, you should talk to staff before the hearing, so it's not a surprise. Because maybe that ex parte contact was, needs a little bit more vetting. Someone starts talking to you about something, write it down, keep a journal. If it becomes a very contentious application, you'll wanna know any ex parte contact.
You can also write an email and send it to
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah, keep it for the record, yeah.
However, bias, I don't like the owner of that property. I don't believe I can act impartially. You don't even have to say that. You can say, do you have any ex parte bias or conflict of interest? I have a bias and I will not be participating this evening, and then you step down off the dais and go to the audience. Same with the conflict of interest, it's your neighbor. The parcel right next to you is going to be developed. There's a potential conflict of interest. Or the person that is the developer is paying you to perform work, that is a conflict of interest. There is a potential conflict of interest, which is like, I might do business with them, and that's again, go to Sean, and they'll even get legal involved to say, do I disclose it? Do I recuse myself? So those are the things that ex parte contacts can be cured. Bias and actual conflict of interest can't be cured. You need to recuse yourself, and potential it depends and needs to be talked, discussed with them.
And if we get into like sticky applications, we'll have legal counsel there for you as well. And so that 5 minutes things with them, so we'll advise you as well.
So the actual order of operations, I just call on people. I mispronounce practically every person's name. It's nothing personal, I do my best. Sometimes you can't read their handwriting and I do follow it. We have a 4-minute timer up on the wall. We will ask people. If it seems like they're wrapping it up really close to their 4 minutes, we'll let them go over a little bit. But if they're not even paying attention, I do not start radically swinging the hammer and asking people to stop at 4 minutes and 1 second. I want people to feel comfortable participating in this very public process. You can ask questions during the thing. It's a little awkward to ask like a proponent or opponent because they're probably already scared being up there to begin with, so be mindful of that, we don't want to grill them. The applicant probably should be prepared to ask or answer questions from us. We also like to allow the staff to present the staff report, ask questions specifically maybe about the particular process, but maybe not about the details, to allow the applicant an opportunity to testify, and then we can ask questions of the applicant. And again, I freestyle sometimes, so I ask
And
questions.
any of us can ask questions.
Yes.
So questions are directed at you from the audience, but the rest of us, when the applicant speaks, it's question time, we can just speak up.
We just usually try and, figure out whose turn it is. And, if you have good questions and you just kind of do this, I try and, firstly, I try to let everybody else ask questions so that all my questions get asked and then I don't have to ask a bunch of them.
I want to make sure, I'll just really quickly, yeah, you may have got to this, but basically, really big picture in the front page here is how this will work. We'll open the hearing, read this script, basically all these disclaimers we just talked about. Staff will give the staff reports, 15 minutes usually, overview of the whole project. Then you guys ask questions of staff, clarifying whatever you guys want to ask questions back and forth. And then we open the testimony period for the public. So it goes, applicant actually provides usually 15 minutes up front, and then they save 15 minutes for rebuttal to any of the testimony. So applicant 15 minutes, then we take really general testimony in favor, opposed, neutral. And then the applicant can get back up and respond to any of the testimony. So if they get thrown under the bus by the public for whatever reason, they have a chance to come back up and respond, 15 minutes usually. Then we close the hearing, the testimony portion.
Hopefully I remember.
Final comments by staff, like, hey, you heard this, just FYI, here's how staff sees it, or whatever, staff, if they have any advice. Then you have another opportunity, questions of staff by the commission, if any. And then you guys deliberate, and that's usually where you guys just really get into things as a commission.
Publicly
deliberate. Yes.
Please do
Yes.
not sandbag any of your complicated questions until after I close the public hearing, because if you are asking a question after the applicant has testified on rebuttal and we've closed the public hearing, and then nothing's been said, and you all of a sudden decide, hey, I think we ought to redesign this side of the building, we're gonna probably have to reopen the hearing to allow the applicant. So it's always best to get questions while the applicant is up.
Yeah.
Open decision,
That's
that's
it.
great decision. What's that? Liberating decision.
And then you guys gotta do the hard thing.
All right.
Make the decision.
All right.